Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up. All messed up.
You wouldn't give her that flower, would you?
One of us, one of us, one of
No.
us.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
The first scene I remember is Jerry Dandrige crashing through the window, catching it on AMC Fright Fest in the afternoon. It hooked me. Seeing it later in my high school studying film, it's just such a great vampire film.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. That scene, by the way, it reminds me of like Jaws 3D. When you see the scene of the shark just gravitating toward the camera. As a child, you didn't get how awful it was. That Jerry Dandrige one holds up way better.
So I watched the documentary about it, and one of the things I was hoping to hear was that there were elements like, we're going to make this 3D. It's just not. It's just the way that scene was filmed.
Oh, really?
Nothing about it 3D.
Okay, that makes sense because it does look like it could have been framed to be a 3D thing. And 3D was a thing in 1987. Michael Jackson Moonwalker was 3D.
I feel like everything was 3D during that time. Like Friday the 13th even went 3D during the 80s.
WPIX back in the day used to do a whole week of horror, and at one point they were popping 3D movies on there too. 3D was everywhere.
You just said the hallowed 4 letters, WPIX, 8 to 10 o'clock movies. Every week was themed, and October was hallowed ground. Ninth Gate would be on or something, and I'd be begging the powers that be to keep my mom from walking in and seeing what I'm watching.
I think that 2 hours exposed me to more horror than anything else.
Oh, easily. And then, like Ryan said, AMC. As I got older, AMC was what I gravitated toward more during the Halloween time because they would show, it almost feel like you were on Grandpa's knee or something. You would be seeing movies that you never knew existed, that were 15 years old, you would never have been exposed to if they didn't get popped onto AMC.
I still remember the schedule, especially during Halloween, because of 31 days, Fright Fest, awesome. Wake up at 6 a.m. and the bus would come at like 8 o'clock. I'd watch Puppet Master, Halloween 4, Halloween 5. My mom's like, what are you watching? Nothing. Don't worry about it. And it's just good memories. And Fright Night is one of those. They aired it because it was something that fans wanted to see. And that's when, I'll be honest, AMC was great because now it's like down to 15 days and it's just shitty movies.
Yeah, I don't understand why they messed with it. Well, they integrated back, there was no slasher stuff and things like that in there back then. It was all demons and it was the classic stuff. And then they integrated sort of modern movies, I guess, into it a little bit more. I think they should have just kept running the same loop. If they ran the same loop that we were watching in 94, 95, 96, I guarantee you the viewership would go through the roof.
I would wake up at 5 in the morning if they showed the sequel to The Omen. That's how I got introduced to that. Right before going to the bus, the guy falls through the lake. Great.
I would imagine Fright Fest was doomed by the rise of streaming services. I imagine it also leads to something like Shudder, because Shudder is an AMC property.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Very cool. Very cool. And Shudder, when I was thinking about it, I flop around trying to find these movies to watch, rewatch, and prepare for the episodes. John's the only one out of the 3 of us with a Shudder subscription?
Yes, he is.
Just like, come on, Amazon Prime. Nope. Come on, Netflix. Nope. Let's go Max. Nope. And I'm like, I gotta cancel these. I'm watching up on them.
I don't want to give free plugs, but Shudder is the best bang for the buck, too, because it's not expensive.
You can give a free plug to Shudder. Yeah. Yeah, you can give a free plug to a golden thing.
What, $5.99 a month?
It's nothing. Hey, yeah, there's the option to get the whole year at a discounted price. It's a legit service.
Do you have to watch commercials?
No.
Now, I might just give them my money just because they're not grinding at the lint in my pockets like everybody else. Oh, man, that's amazing. Every other thing I have, it's like $11.99, but you have to watch 15 commercials in one 20-minute episode. But anyway, enough complaining. Fright Night 1987 versus Fright Night 2011. Now, how do you compare anybody to Vampire Humperdinck? For those who don't know, it's Jerry Dandrige from The Princess Bride.
In my multiverse, Fright Night is a sequel to The Princess Bride. Prince Humperdinck became Jerry Dandrige.
Nice. And so how do we do it? Follow up. He does such a good job in the original Fright Night. I wouldn't even say his range. Like, it's not an example of an amazing range to go from Prince Humperdinck and his other stuff. He is in other horror movies. He's in The Corpse Bride, right? He voiced in The Corpse Bride. So horror is not a genre he's completely alienated from aside from Fright Night. I thought he did a great job in the original.
Chris Sarandon is the perfect Jerry. He's got enough slick, cool sexiness to be believable without being top. He's the guy next door, not sexy Hollywood guy next door.
You had to hide your mom. God forbid he's like gardening or something like that.
A little digging.
Yeah, a little night digging. He's putting in the nightshades. He's very believable. And I think this is why he crushes that role. He's very believable as the dude whose dimples will distract your parents enough to believe him over you.
It's definitely shown in the scene when he's talking to Charlie's mom. You can see he's just cool, calculating. He's sexy, man. He's got that romanticism. He pulls it off so well. And then when he becomes that monster, because I'm thinking of the scene when him and Charlie had that little fight scene, he stabs him with the pencil. You see the evil come out. And Chris Sarandon does it so well. Funny enough, he didn't even want to do it. He read the script and he was like, all right, let me meet the director, Tom Holland. This was his first film to direct. He actually wrote Psycho 2 beforehand. So he was like, let me meet him. And Tom Holland went shot by shot with him in an LA cafe. And Chris Sarandon was like, I'm sold. Then they worked together again. He was the detective in Child's Play, which Tom Holland wrote and directed also.
And that was my first experience seeing him. So he'll always be seared in my memory from that movie. That movie scarred me. We're not going to get into it this episode. We're going to wait until we roll around to that because I got stories. That movie messed me up. That is how I remember him. And I was like, he's the good guy. Then he's the bad guy for the rest of his career.
He was a good guy in Bordello of Blood.
Oh gosh. Was anybody a good guy in Bordello of Blood? Honestly, though, that's a good reference. Bordello of Blood's been a minute.
It's the third best Tales from the Crypt movie.
What's the first one? Yeah.
Demon Night.
Demon Knight's good.
Everything about Demon Night. Soundtrack, atmosphere, that movie is solid. The original Tales from the Crypt movie, which I don't think is terribly related to the series, is better.
The 70s one?
Yeah, that 70s one.
That one was based on the EC comics, which is cool because it led to Stephen King and George A. Romero doing Creepshow.
We need more adaptations of graphic novels and things like that. And I'm not talking about just Gaiman and Sandman, and people need to take more risks. Like those types of adaptations are gold.
Yeah, they are. I just read Batman Arkham Asylum, Serious Place on a Serious Earth. Not even the art, but how the story is written and stuff. It's got like that Sandman vibe, that Gaiman vibe. And it's like, it's so deep. There's more to it than meets the eye.
Nice. More than meets the eye. Where have I heard that before, Ryan? So what are the redeeming qualities of the 2011 version of Fright Night that make it viable to put in the ring with the 1987 version?
It's hard to compete because I love Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell is too steamy to be Jerry. He's too sexy. Believable as somebody who's going to live next door to some person.
That's fair. They should have penguined him up a bit for the movie. They should have thought ahead on that
I
one.
think they went the opposite way and sexied him up more. Like his eyebrows are super thick and perfect, and he's well muscled, and everything about him is just way too perfect.
They're yelling at the assistants, like, somebody get more oil for Colin's eyebrows.
I thought he was just vicious through the characterization of him. I didn't like it. It's so opposite of what Chris Sarandon did. Because Chris Sarandon doing like the sexy part and the vicious part and blending it so well together. Colin Farrell, you can just see that viciousness, and there was like no difference.
Ryan, that's where you believe he's a nice guy. Or you buy into what everybody else is seeing and why he's able to hide in plain sight so well. The Colin Farrell version doesn't pull that off remotely.
Even when he's gardening, I'm just like, oh, this is cute. You want to tear their throats out. It's right in front of your face. Even if you compare the scenes to Evil Ed, when Chris Sarandon, Jerry Dandrige, turns Evil Ed into the vampire, you see the connection, you feel the emotion in the scene. And then with Colin Farrell and Christopher Mintz-Plasse, it's just there's no emotion, no connection. It's just like, I'm just going to turn you. And it's just like...
Because they rushed it. In the original, you connect to Evil Ed before he gets turned. He's got the line, "You're so cool, Brewster." You have that emotional connection to Evil Ed. In the original, in the second one, he's done almost instantly. You don't connect to him ever.
So I'm hearing there's an art form to making your comic foil ghoul, your Redfield, your Evil Ed, whomever from Buffy, played by Pee Wee Herman. That one's probably one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he's like the number 2 guy. You have to do almost the same thing you have to do with the lead vampire. You have to show the story behind the monster. That's what makes these roles so good. And even in one like Fright Night, which nobody would really, I don't think a lot of people would talk about it like this, where you're talking about Jerry's character as something you need to flush out, or Evil Ed, the way you described it, John. It's a little bit more art to it than just being able to smash it forward. And I think that's where these remakes fail. They're losing the thread.
And maybe it's the age thing. Maybe it's they have forgotten to make this kind of movie right. But it's glossier. You lose the grit. If you read about the remake of Fright Night, it still has a comedy tag, but that's not really that version. There's a couple of Peter Vincent scenes that are amusing, but most of the comedy element is wiped out.
Right. And you need that as well. That's, I mean, anything in the 80s that hits like these genre horror movies need that comedy edge, in my opinion. They can't just be like Cabin Fever, where it's a scary thing and there's lots of boobs everywhere. They're just cherry picking 2 ingredients out of a whole recipe that they need. No, I'm definitely with you. And like I said, I'm just going to circle back a little bit with the idea that the vampire trope in general, you have to humanize the monster in some way or have an Evil Ed. You can't just leave that concept of Frankenstein too. The journey to becoming the monster. With Jerry, you don't need that. The story is about the kid being in the face of evil and nobody believing him. That's where the real scare comes from. The idea that you see the looming threat and everybody's just giving their neck to it. You know what I mean? In this one, that's how they get around that. But I'm thinking of like, I don't know, like Let the Right One In is a good example of it. In Interview with a Vampire is a whole other aspect of it. But in Let the Right One In, the vampire's like reluctant to kill in a way, a little bit. And the kid wants to kill other people. That's an interesting one. Sorry, I'm going on a really weird tangent. Let's get back to Fright Night.
And you sort of also miss with the remake how Chris Sarandon's Jerry Dandrige, the way he toys with Charlie in the beginning, where with Colin Farrell's version, it's just more in your face. Like he's just openly taunting him, where, you know, Sarandon's Jerry is subtle almost. And he also has Billy Cole to do it. And one of the funny things that comes from the documentary is Jonathan Starks, who plays Billy Cole, says basically every scene I'm going out of my way to bully Charlie as much as possible. And it comes across and it works so well.
It shows well as the character progresses because you see him as that assistant and it's like, this kid's just crazy. He's like, he doesn't know what's going on. They even get caught in the act. I'm shocked the mom doesn't see it while they're by the car. He throws the body, the prostitute, in the trunk. And she's like, Charlie, what are you guys doing over there? Charlie.
What's part of the oblivious aspect of it that they yuck up a lot with the parents? Like what the kid sees, they're useless.
In the original, mom is comedically oblivious. In the remake, Toni Collette is fine. She's a great actress. She's pretty good in the role too. But it's a different spirit. She starts as disbelieving and never really figures out what's going on. They get in a car crash and knock her out. So she's written out that way.
She did kick ass in that movie. Like that van scene was a big highlight for me. And then they ruined it by killing Chris Sarandon, even though he asked for it. It was just like, God damn it.
I gotta ask the chicken and the egg for this one. What are the other movies that like we get the I see this from my window aspect? I was thinking of a couple. I was trying to think of what was the first movie that did the whole my neighbor's dragging a body out a back door thing.
Rear Window?
You think Rear Window? Hitchcock?
So this actually comes up. They say before Rear Window, there was a movie called The Window.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where that comes from. Before movies, spying on your neighbor is a useful element.
I think it kind of pulls from the tenement housing days when you're jammed against each other, pouring your poop outside in a pot, that kind of thing. And you're forced to look outside at the weird and horrific things that because it's more city-like, right? And then with this, you plop that concept into the suburbs where it's safe.
Damn Jerry Dandrige.
And your damn handsome face, you son of a bitch.
Prince Humperdinck.
Humperdunk. Humperhunk.
Humperhunk.
Hey, I mean, that nightclub scene, that dance scene. It was cool because, like, you see that transformation of Amanda Bearse's character, Amy, goes through from teenager to adult to lost love. That was pretty cool. But the dance scene and the music, it's so 80s, but it works.
That's the best part, though. It's almost you have to suspend your disbelief because it's so 80s. The 80s seems fake. I don't think the kids today can understand the level of cartoonish the 80s were.
Scarface is a serious movie, but there's cartoon elements in it.
It feels like a comic book when you're reading it. That just the lapels alone in that movie, it's 90% lapel.
The neons and all the colors. Yeah, well, the 80s are a cartoon.
Yeah, it feels that way. You get movies, you go back to Fright Night, a great movie. You're watching it and then they pull in this 80s thing and it pulls you out of it for a second. You're just like, oh my God, the 80s were crazy. Is that Criss Cross in the background? What is happening?
That's what makes the 80s movies and even the early 90s horror films great, is that they put a little lightheartedness in it. So it's like it gives off the edge to feel, all right, this is cool. I feel good. And then bam, everyone's dead. And you're like, oh, this is horrible. And it's more lightheartedness. It's a good pattern. Like a movie where it's like, oh shit, the entire time is good, but too much of it. You got to have that variety. And that's like perfect for Fright Night. Like 1981. The 2011 one, I love David Tennant. Peter Vincent, that was perfect for him. Those are the lighthearted moments.
In the 2011 one, for sure. In the 85 one, the Peter Vincent character is funny in other ways. Number one, he's a Hammer horror film character. That sort of British vampire killer. Tom Holland says he based that character on Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. And he wanted Vincent Price to play the character, but he was already in failing health by that point. But you get Roddy McDowall. As much as I love Vincent Price, Roddy McDowall is perfect for that role.
It's how he acts and reacts. He was doing the good Peter Cushing impression.
Yeah.
I love Peter Cushing, especially from the Hammer films. He gave me that vibe from Horror of Dracula. The pocket mirror and his reactions, and it flows nicely. Especially when he's like fighting Evil Ed and stuff. The brandishing of the cross on the forehead. It's just iconic.
And plays bumbling vampire killers so well. Tell you how many times I've seen the original Fright Night. Dozens. They talked about this in the documentary, and I never noticed in the beginning to have the movie within the movie with Peter Vincent. He's going to stake the vampire. The stake is backwards. The dull end is the end he's going to hammer in. And they did that on purpose to add that cheese element to a movie within a movie. Like that attention to that kind of detail.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, like so cool.
That would happen in a Hammer film.
I'm trying to think of major differences in the original and the new one, the remake, besides the hunkierness of the vampire. What else is starkly different? You mentioned the character is more evil, but I'm trying to think of actual plot points that they changed.
Going back to Peter Vincent, he's a TV show host in the original and a magician in the remake. Two different elements.
One.
It's easier to get access to him. In the original, he just meets him out the studio. Hey, oh, you're a fan. In this one, Charlie has to be a reporter. He's got the fake newspaper thing and stuff, and he starts investigating it, which it's a nice little plot point too in it, because it leads to, in the remake, Peter Vincent, you learn his parents were killed by Jerry Dandrige. It's a nice circle.
Yeah.
But Peter Vincent from Peter Cushing to Chris Angel.
I just want to see Chris Angel get killed by a vampire.
Why'd you do this to me? Look, in the original, Peter Vincent is a fake.
Yeah.
It's revealed that he's a fake. He's an actor playing a role. With the remake Peter Vincent, the first time you see him, he's got long hair, piercings, and tattoos, and you're like, oh, that's a cool dude. And then, he gets in the room alone with Charlie. The hair comes off, piercings come out. It's completely fake.
I do love the idea of Charlie showing up, and this is like an 80s thing. Just show up at the back door of the studio, and he's like emptying out his ashtray filled with cigarettes. He's like, oh, you're a fan? Whereas now you'd get jumped by 15 security for being a near celebrity. They take the glamour away from the low-level celebrity back then. The Magician versus Joe Bob Briggs. If you don't know what that is, I'm better than you. Not you two. I'm talking about the listeners. I already know you guys know Joe Bob.
I'll tell Shudder more. Another reason is you get Joe Bob Briggs.
You mentioned that once, and I should have just bit the bullet back then. But I think it'd be cool to ask Joe Bob Briggs for help with anything, too. Like a bully or a werewolf, and see what he does. He'd tell you to go fuck yourself. Magician versus television host. And there was another juicy tidbit, but one of you is probably going to reveal it later, so I'll leave that alone. About that character and the Fright Night show. I'm looking for a glimmer in your eyes. Ryan knows what I'm talking about, so I'll leave that alone. Other notable changes,
the setting. You go from Corvallis, Iowa to Las Vegas suburbs. It kind of like dampers it in its own way because like at least Iowa, it's quiet, nothing really going on. It's not expected. Then you go to Las Vegas, middle of a desert, but you hear Las Vegas, you think lights, you think of glamour and stuff. And they do flip it because they make it darker against that glamour, quote unquote. But the quiet suburb is more fitting for a vampire film because you don't know what the hell's going to happen. While Las Vegas is like anything can happen.
Yeah. Least believable thing in the whole remake is an Irish guy gardening in Vegas. Not a chance he's alive. You know he's a vampire right away.
There is an element of that setting in the new one that is effective for me when they show long shots of the community surrounded by nothingness. It does give a little bit more of an isolated feel than the straight suburban setting of the original.
That's true. You have to make that leap for the suburban feel to feel isolated because he's isolated even though surrounded by people. And that's what makes it scary. I'm a huge psychological horror guy. That stuff messes me up when you're like, you're drowning, but surrounded by people. It's another example of the new movie putting it in your face, whereas the original made you make that connection yourself.
Yeah, that was also another change. In the remake, he's trying to create an army of vampires. But in the original, he's just killing anyone who he wants to kill. And he turns Ed, he turns Amy, but he's not trying to build an army. He's just lonely. The other one wants a cannibalistic army because they'll eat one another, according to the lore in the movie.
Which is interesting. It gives you an idea like the narcissism behind being a vampire. You create friends, underlings. They're disposable. You move on to your next adventure. They're solo, isolated. There's no really digging out of that. That's why they play with their food. You get bored.
It's true. They were coming out of the walls, the ground, dirt flying off. It's like he's controlling them. That scene wasn't bad. That was a pretty cool scene thinking about it as the sunlight's pouring in. But the original ending where the sunlight's coming in as they're breaking the glass, it's still iconic.
Mm-hmm. One of the things where the weakness is so glaring, get him out into the light and he'll die. But he's also a superhuman, multi-century-old undead, way smarter than you. And you're also a kid. That's the best part, is that you're just a stupid kid getting yourself in the position to be able to break the glass and have the plan and all that. It's why the movie works. Well, it's one of the reasons. There's a lot of reasons the movie works. But, you know, like, how do you make it so the kid wins? And that's how they did it.
They just make it easy for the kid to win because they make a simple escape route. That's what Tom Holland does. He makes it very simple. If you are in that situation and you're a kid, you can do that. Plus, Charlie watches Fright Night, the show Peter Vincent hosts in the original and the remake. He's watched all those horror movies, so he has that knowledge prior. That's why it works. Even when I first saw it when I was young, it works.
That's a big difference in the two also is original Italy and his love of horror and that Fright Night franchise in particular that discovers the vampire first. In the remake, it's Ed. Ed is all over Jerry being a vampire way before. He drags Charlie in.
I prefer Charlie dragging Ed into it. It's more clear because Charlie lives next door. He should see Jerry being a vampire instead of Ed stalking him. It's creepy. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, he's a vampire. What if he wasn't a vampire, Ed? All right? He's just a gardener planting potatoes.
Gardener. Something to see here, folks.
It's on the outskirts of Las Vegas.
Right, where potatoes thrive.
Yeah.
What else was revealed in the documentary that blew you away?
Two of the coolest things I got out of that documentary. One of the big questions I had watching the original is, do vampires really like apples that much? It's an apple through the movie.
Why do you think he did that? Why do you think they went with the apple?
I actually learned about that. So Tom Holland had each actor write a biography for the character before they started filming. Chris Sarandon wrote that in because he discovered that the majority of bats weren't vampiric, but they were fruit eating. So he thought it would be a nice twist to give his vampire based on bats a fruit as sort of like a crutch. So the apple comes from Chris Sarandon.
Chris Sarandon nailed it. He's a little too hip for the room because the majority of people are not going to know. Unless you watch Crocodile Dundee. Anybody remember the iconic scene? Crocodile Dundee 2 or 1? I think it's 2, where they're in the outback.
2 is.
and they crush up the fruit and they throw it on the guys so the bats go after them. They're called flying foxes in Australia. They're huge. That's how I know that's true.
The other sort of cool revelation I got from the documentary is William Ragsdale cost the production company $100,000 in the scene where he's running down the stairs, not being chased, just sort of running down the stairs to talk to his mom. They did a bunch of takes, and on the last take, he tripped and broke his foot. It leads to delays because he can't do all the other stats and like stuff like that. And you could apparently, when they went and rewatched the tape, you could hear his foot break. He gets sent to a doctor by the insurance company. He's honest with the doctor. They're like, so does this really cost filming time? And Ragsdale's like, no, I mean, mostly I just sit around and wait for them to be ready for me. And the opposite answer is what they really needed him to give.
That's funny.
But they had to change some stuff and go overtime.
Yeah, $100,000 just like that, and that's in the '80s too. So yeah, that's no joke money right there. But listen, Cary Elwes did it. You can man up and do it yourself. You know what I mean? He broke his foot on Andre the Giant's scooter like a man. All right, and then he fought. He sword fought 2 days later because he was terrified his career was over.
You know what's crazy is he breaks his foot running down normal steps. But you watch Nightmare on Elm Street when Nancy's climbing up the steps and sinking in. No one broke their foot or ankle on that. That was more dangerous than walking down regular steps. The simplicity can kill you.
It's the luck of the draw. I've gone down on ass over tea kettle on my steps just because I was wearing socks and just off you go. And there's something for those kids listening, landing on your ass above a certain age. It's just a different experience, guys.
Landing on anything after a certain age is a different experience.
Fair point.
It's like Home Alone, but not funny.
Yeah, not funny.
No.
Marv, I think he's dead. Harry, I can't feel my legs, Harry. Oh, man. Fright Night, Fright Night. So, all right, guys. What else do we want to segue into besides what I know Ryan's sitting on?
Oh, I got that ending in my head if you want to cover the original endings of Fright Night.
I was fishing for it. Let's do it.
All right, so Tom Holland, the original ending, before there was like a whole bunch of revisions and everything, the original ending was going to have Peter Vincent hosting Fright Night. And as he's hosting Fright Night on live TV, he's transforming into a vampire bat because he got turned into a vampire. I think that would have been so different because it would have been more of a shocker. And it would have been awesome because like Charlie would have been watching it and it would have been like, oh shit, Peter Vincent turning into a vampire it's unique, especially for that time for a shock ending where there was few in between. Because I feel like at that time, Sleepaway Camp really comes to mind, or Friday the 13th when Jason comes out of the water.
The jump scare one. No, I think that ending slaps. I mean, I can't say it would be better, but I love that idea. You feel safe. Everything's good. You have that good feeling. The good side won, and then he's doing and the transformation, and you cut to credits, you win. And then you roll into Van Halen or something. On the credits.
With the devil.
Bam, you got her. I think that would elevate it a bit.
I love the Evil Ed ending.
Yeah, I like that. Is it still there? Did you see eyes and hear the laugh and stuff? Or is it imagination? I like the way that sort of left.
It screws with you. It's like the end of Hellraiser, where it's like, what's your pleasure? And it's like, oh no, we're going through this all over again. I'm stoked.
And I think if you're going to shoot for a twist ending, you're not going to outdo Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, God, no.
Nothing about that is you can replicate. I just learned today, Felissa Rose, who was the girl in Sleepaway Camp, is going to be at Connecticut Horror Fest in May.
Oh, sweet.
I need her to make the face if we take a picture if I go. It's just like, why would you want her to smile? You want her to do the face.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
Do you know how many times she poses that way?
A lot. Having done a few of the cons now and getting to watch the people up there for 2 days in a row, she's probably done it 10,000 times at this point.
For sure.
That's the great thing. They love it because they love the fans.
That too.
It probably gets sickening after a while, but then they revamp and do it again.
Yeah. So that's the original ending to Fright Night, which John prefers the one they went with, which is good too, by the way. I'm not saying anything otherwise. It is good. But any other juicy little morsels or tidbits you guys want to go over before we roll into your fives?
Yeah, so like there's a couple of things that struck me, like in the original, it's Peter Vincent to finally come around to the fact that is a vampire is just his own self-importance and vanity. That he's like got his little pocket mirror out checking himself, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, Jerry's not in the reflection. I thought that was a cool touch. Also, one of the things I thought the 2011 one did really well was sort of reinvent the vampire rules or modernize them, not reinvent, where now you can't see a vampire on a video camera. I thought that was a really good touch to take it into a more modern setting.
One of the things that would have ruined the original ending, because they would have been recording on TV, right? That would have ruined it. But no, you're right. That's a huge one. If you're not going to show reflection, you wouldn't capture their image. Cool idea.
And the other thing that struck me towards the end of the original, apparently, and they acknowledge this in the documentary, a woman gets turned into a vampire. She becomes sexier, her hair grows, and her boobs grow.
That's scientifically proven. It happens in LA all the time.
That wasn't happening to Marcy Darcy.
That wasn't happening to Marcy Darcy. She didn't get the Botox breast implant vampire treatment.
You just needed Bundy to walk in at that point.
Marcy Darcy. That was another fun. Spotting her again was awesome. I can't remember his name. Her husband from the later seasons is in the show Shrinking that my wife and I watch, and it's hilarious to see him acting again. He's amazing too in the show. He's just perfect. He plays a guy named Derek. But anyway, you remember the first husband was Steve. Second husband's name I can't remember now.
He was the guy who had this series of TV shows that failed. I always confuse him with the guy from, he's not the guy from Scrubs, but their names are similar.
Dr. Cox?
No, the janitor.
Jefferson Millhouse Darcy. Jefferson's, the guy's name is Ted McGinley.
Ted McGinley.
It's funny. It's such a man's world. We're literally talking about the female character from the show where he's just like, screw her. We're going to talk about her counterpart, Ted McGinley, because we remember Marcy Darcy. She made that show.
Oh, yeah, the banter.
What if Marcy Darcy is really Amy and still a vampire?
I'm looking at her headshot. Marcy Darcy would have made a killer vampire with her Karen haircut.
She was Karen before Karen.
For real. 100%. We've got to rebrand them as Marcy's because she looks like some kind of Australian waterfowl.
That's why she was called the chicken head.
That's why Al went back and forth. That's right. But yeah, that's just, I don't know what, this movies from that era, when you see the actors and they have tendrils out into different shows that were part of your formative years, like Married with Children. It's a nice little shot into the memory bank of like, that was such a better time. Look at her stupid hair. What a bitch she was in that. Let him go to the strip club. He's a shoe salesman, for Christ's sake, Marcy. Who plays her character in the remake?
Imogen Poots.
Oh, God. You know, she's okay in Outer Range. That's Imogen Poots?
Yep.
She was in Green Room, too.
With Van Yeltsin.
That's why I don't recognize her. She looks about 5 years old in that movie. Maybe Imogen Poots gets it done as far as acting goes. She can stand on the same stage as Thanos and get the job done. Josh Brolin, for those who don't know my weird way of talking. That's an interesting swap out, though. Another one, like Colin Farrell, Imogen Poots. And that's why I will say her name like that forever. Your last name is the same as a soft fart.
I had to Google the name just because I was afraid I would think Putin like pot or something. I want to call her a fart. That's the pronunciations.
Poot. God.
To continue on Billy Cole, I do feel he added more. And it goes back to our first episode where there needs to be a Renfield character. Colin Farrell's Jerry Dandrige, he's a powerful vampire. But if they included that Renfield style character, Billy Cole, it could have made it a little more lighthearted on the viciousness of Jerry Dandrige. Like Evil Ed doesn't even, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, he doesn't even do it justice to make it comedy. It's just like, oh, it's just McLovin. Where's your ID?
And that's another cancer of these times. The way they cast things is who's hot right now? Let's get the kid from Superbad. The fat one? No, the one who shits his pants when girls talk to him.
Should have gotten Michael Cera. That would have been a little bit better.
He would have been better in that role. He's well hated, though. Lots of people just love to shit on Michael Cera for some reason. Well, actually, I can imagine there's plenty of reasons. I liked him in Juno.
Yes.
He's crushed that role. He plays himself, but still. I don't get the Michael Cera hate.
That's part of the hate for him.
Yeah.
He's playing himself.
Such a kooky character, Michael Cera. It works. Jonah Hill branched out. He's definitely been in some character roles.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Thinking of the teeth. People forget, like, the character was smoking crack in the beginning of the movie and, like, trying to get Leo's character to smoke crack, too. And then he got made into a multi-millionaire. by the end of the film. Life's not fair.
He eats a live fish.
Yeah.
The actual person did. Hopefully Jonah Hill didn't. I knew a guy who worked in stocks and all that during that time. And I asked him one day, was this going on, Wolf of Wall Street? And he was like, oh yeah, 100%. Everything on that movie went down. Like, if you've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, a lot of that stuff did happen.
There's a megalomania to that time period in the stock market, I should say, not like in the exchange, but being in those office buildings. That was a wonderful time to be a debaucherous asshole.
True. Or you become Patrick Bateman.
He was ranked one of the least believable psychopaths, around the same level as Hannibal Lecter. What's his name? Sugar from No Country for Old Men was the number one. That's one where you're like, yep, I get it. We should do an episode on that list. That would be fun. These guys are going to roll into their top fives. I don't know their top five lists this week.
They're different again.
Are they different
Yeah.
again?
What did you go with?
I went with movies in the same realm of Fright Night 1985. So if you love Fright Night, the original one, these are, and the 2011 one, if you like the 2011 one. I have 2 movie recommendations for that, as well as 3 for 1985, because the 85 is better.
Mine's very different.
I'm curious on that. So for the 2011 one, I recommend first Night Teeth, which is about like an Uber driver driving around these 2 females around the city. They're having a good time. And then he finds out as they're feeding that they're vampires, and they take him hostage and kind of force him to do their bidding. There's that one, as well as Day Shift, which stars Jamie Foxx, as well as Dave Franco, who was in the 2011 Fright Night. They're vampire hunters. I've seen a little bit of it. It's very entertaining. It's funny. Jamie Foxx he's good in it. He's a good vampire hunter. And there's an appearance from Snoop Dogg, which is awesome. He's a vampire hunter. Great cameo, and he kicks ass. Snoop Doggy
I just got
Dogg.
a great idea for Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. Instead of baking muffins for him, he has to kill her for society to continue, because she's the queen vampire. You can't just stake her through the heart. That's not going to work this time. We got to find another way.
Sunlight, a lot of sunlight. You gotta throw her in the sun.
You're going to see a recurring theme in future episodes. I want to see somebody kill Martha Stewart. That idea is going to crop up again. But Snoop Dogg rolling in is better than the cameo when he was Huggy Bear in Starsky and Hutch. You can't bring in Snoop as a vampire hunter. I don't even remember the other people you mentioned. With Oscar winner what? No, Snoop's here. Who
Wait,
cares?
wasn't Snoop a vampire in a movie?
Oh, please. Can we get
Yes.
Bones, right?
He was a vampire in
Yes,
Bones.
I've actually seen that movie.
Yes.
Or seen Bones.
2002 Blast from the Past. I remember the art. It looked like an album cover as he's there. I'm like, oh, is he going to sing? Nope. Total opposite.
That's when you got your album covers from Sam Goody. That's when the cover of an album mattered. Like you were buying a CD or a record. My God. Do you remember when they were dueling for space, vinyl versus CDs in those middle bins? Anyway, I will continue to prattle on. Fact 5.
I just got 3 more. These are related to Fright Night 1985. If you love that movie, I recommend a movie called Vamp. It's just come up through Shudder. $5.99 again. It stars Grace Jones as a stripper vampire, and these 3 guys who are in college are trying to join a fraternity, and they're trying to get like good with the fraternity, so they're gonna hire strippers, and they get locked into this strip club and have to fend for their lives. It's like From Dusk Till Dawn, to be honest, after I see it, but more 80-ish, and Grace Jones in a red wig and white makeup with really red lips. It's like an iconic image, I would say, from that film.
I may be looking that up right now.
The second one is Jim Carrey's Once Bitten. Jada loves that movie. He turns into a vampire, meets the girl in the nightclub, and he has to have sex to reverse everything. People who love the original Fright Night will love as well, I think, because it's like got the little horror element and it's got the humor. Number 1, we talked about it earlier, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love the show, but the movie is very iconic. Christy Swanson, Donald Sutherland, Paul Rubens, Rutger Hauer, Luke Perry, Hilary Swank, David Arquette, Thomas Jane, and Stephen Root are all in this great movie. It's got humor, horror, and Rutger Hauer as the main villain is a treat, especially after if you watch The Hitcher, Blade Runner. It's nice to see him do something zany but serious at the same time. That's my top 5. John, I got to hear your
That's a
top
good
5,
list.
though. I'm curious which way you went.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So I went 5 other Tom Holland projects.
of course you did.
We have a writer, we have a director. He's done some acting. And I actually have 2 honorable mentions this time. The Stephen King adaptation of Dinner, which he directed,
Yep.
and his writing job on Psycho 2, the actual 5.
That was a good sequel.
Yeah, it was a pretty good sequel. I haven't seen it recently enough for it to be in my top 5, but it's a good sequel. So number 5 is his episode of the Masters of Horror TV series. It was called We All Scream for Ice Cream. It's a childhood prank gone wrong. Kids kill an ice cream man clown accidentally. Years later, he comes back for revenge. It's probably the meltiest thing that's ever been on TV. My number 4 is Class of 1984, sort of biographical at this point. A new teacher versus a gang of punks in a rough school with Roddy McDowall and a young Michael J. Fox. My number 2, Cloak and Dagger, which he wrote, starring Henry Thomas and Dabney Coleman. It's like this regular kid and his imaginary friend accidentally stumble on equipment that spies are after, and it turns into this whole like spy movie. It's a nice nostalgic movie. Number 2, I went with Digging Up the Marrow, which he acts in as himself, but it's an Adam Green mockumentary about monsters, cinematic monsters, and a man played by Ray Wise who believes that they're real in the earth and knows how to find them. He leads the crew on a quest to find monsters. Number 1 is Child's Play.
Really like that.
Child's Play is number 1.
It's back.
I can't wait to get to that episode. I just can't wait.
Child's Play got perverted into kiddie movies. They got ruined. The original Child's Play is scary.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the first 40 minutes before they reveal him. You know when he's skulking around, he can't see him. Chucky, I'm talking about.
The little footprints, a flower.
Yes. The knife they gave that thing, diabolical, those bastards. That movie fucked me up. I was so young. That was on my mother. I saw so many things I shouldn't have before I was 10. Child's Play was around when I was 4 or 5. I was probably younger than Daniel when I saw Child's Play.
It's got child in the movie, so it's okay for children.
Yeah, I think that was their reasoning. I remember I was with my family and they were like, let's rent Boogie Nights. I love the 70s. And I made it about 20 minutes into it. I was like, I'm going to leave now. Heather Graham is gorgeous, but she did just take off her clothes in front of my grandma. I think I'm out of here. Child's Play was a masterpiece, but I always do find it interesting to see the connection between an actor and a director, and Humperdinck is in both films.
One thing I want to point out about Tom Holland is his local ties. He was born in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
Went to Ossining High School.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So like he's local.
Is he
He's still with us.
Let's find
I don't
him.
know if he lives in this area
No,
anymore.
I didn't mean dead. I didn't Tim Curry him. I just wonder if he still lives around here.
I don't.
Rest in peace, Tim. Yeah, hopefully. That would be cool if we ran into
That
him.
would be
Awesome. And you would recognize him. So
That's cool.
Wouldn't it be neat if he just randomly decided to go to Connecticut Horror Fest and was walking around? But they don't do that sort of thing. Those are Bill Murray stories almost exclusively.
You know who used to be a story like that is Grandpa Munster, Al Lewis.
Met him.
That multiple times. He'd Pisco in Manhattan and then somewhere. He was everywhere all the time.
He connected with people really well. I met him at a car show out of makeup. He was just there to see cars. I was 11 or 12. My mom goes, "Oh my God, that's what from the Munsters." He turned around and started fucking with us because she didn't remember his name. He was a cool guy. He's a funny old man. That's a good reference. Child's Play. All right. Local legend. Well, that's Xenomania episode 5 on Fright Night 1985 and Fright Night 2011. Hope you enjoyed, and we're going to catch you next time. Next episode's going to be not on Child's Play. What's it going to be on, boys?
Fright Night.
Fright Night 2.
There's a big curveball for everybody, but there's continuity. Hooray. Take it easy, everybody.
They
Be very free.